Hi, hello, good evening. It is still the 22nd of December 2025, and I don't usually read the comments that people put on my YouTube pages or channels or even on Facebook, really. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It just depends how I'm feeling. But there's just one thing that I just wanted to quickly say that is, thank you to everybody who has commented. And it all seems to be that everyone um, has the misconception that when you leave a property, that your landlord automatically has the right to keep your deposit. That is not true. Okay, it may have been true 20, 30, 40 years ago, but it is not the case now. Now, the first property I ever rented was in, I think it was 2009 to about 2012. And I was fucked over big time with that property. It was a housing association property. I was given loads and loads of bullshit from them. I was given loads and loads of bullshit from the council, and citizens' advice were not helpful in the slightest. I was told I was in arrears. I was told I'd been Section 21. I was told that I didn't have a legal leg to stand on, that I had to leave. And due to constant bullying and harassment, not just from the council, but from my landlord and my family not supporting me, and having to live next to really abusive neighbours who were threatening to kill me and the police not doing fuck all, I left. I left and I was classed as intentionally making myself homeless. I didn't know anything about whether I could claim a deposit back. I didn't know anything about whether they owed me any money. And all I had them do for several years was blame me and say I owed them money. And the housing association have now been taken over by another housing association. And when I moved into this property in 2016, I rang that housing association and I said, I used to be a tenant, this used to be my address. Do you have any records of me on the system? And they said, no. Anything that is over 5 years old will not be on the file. I also got told the same thing by Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council, which I know is complete bullshit, because I pulled them up on not supporting me and not offering me in 2012 what they call, what's it called? I always forget what it's called. Like, if you're in debt or if you're struggling to pay your rent, you can housing there's some kind of housing money that you can claim, and I always forget what it's called. And if anyone knows what that is, then please share the information, and I will, when I remember what it's called, explain it in a bit more detail. And I actually went to a council meeting, and they said to me in that council meeting, you would not have been entitled to that money because you were not homeless. You told us you had somewhere else to live. And when I originally asked them about this in 2012 and then again in 2013, they were completely dismissive. But yet in 2014, when I brought it up after having my son at a council meeting, they seem to have all of a sudden find all this paperwork on me. So it's always a concern of mine in the back of my head that, they're going to have this paperwork on file somewhere and they're going to try and use it against me now that I'm being made homeless again. And discretionary housing payment, that's what it's called. I don't remember. So yes, I should have been entitled to discretionary housing payment. And the reason for that was because I was apparently in arrears with a housing association. And that is what discretionary housing payments are supposed to help with. And I'm not saying you don't have to pay that money back. But again, it was not something that was mentioned or something I was advised to put in a claim for, when apparently I only owed something like 100 quid to my landlord. And then over 6 months later, I get told that then fucked up my benefits big time, and they actually owed me £2,500 in housing benefits. As to whether who got that money or where that money disappeared to, I don't know. All I know is I didn't receive a penny of it. And now, in 2025, I'm in a situation where I am going to be homeless again in 2026. My bond that I paid for the property I'm living in now has gone into what is called a deposit protection scheme. All right, if you are going to rent a property and they are not offering you a deposit protection scheme but requesting a bond, do not go with that company. Do not go with that landlord. Do not go with that estate agents. Okay? And the reason why this came in, this deposit protection scheme protection, wasn't just to protect the tenant. It was also to protect the landlord. And so most places, when you rent, whether it's in a private housing sector, council or housing association, will expect you to pay at least 1 month's rent up front, plus the first month's rent, and part of that will be part of your bond, depending on your tenancy agreement. Now that money, that bond, it's still not 100% clear what that bond is actually for, but either way, you put in a bond. And it was always my understanding that the reason you pay a bond is in case, you fall behind with any payments, or when you leave the property, you have any money outstanding, that bond could be used for that money, for that payment that you've missed. Other people have said, what the bond is for, it's for if you leave a property and it's in disrepair, or if something needs replacing or fixing, your landlord can then request that you do not receive that bond back. But in order to do that, they have to do it in writing to the deposit protection scheme, not to the estate agent. Okay? This is where people get confused. They have to, if it's a managed tenancy, obviously when you hand back in the keys, or you no longer live at that property, there is a time frame in which the landlord or the estate agent on behalf of the landlord can say, whoa, hang on a minute, we're not going to give you your deposit back. And the reason we're not going to give you your deposit back is because of the following. They cannot and should not be ringing you, which is what I know for a fact happened with both of my neighbours next door, that the estate agent rang them and said, right, we've just got the keys off your next door neighbour. I didn't even sign a piece of paper to prove I'd even given them the keys. All right, I could have turned around and said, I don't have keys to those houses. What are you asking me for keys for? But I didn't. And I asked them straight, do I need to sign a document to prove that you have received these keys from me on behalf of the previous tenant of this house and this house? And the estate agent said no. And yet right in front of me, the estate agents, there were separate estate agents that went with the same company, turned around and phoned up the previous tenant and said, hi, we're at the property, we've just got the keys from your neighbour, and we're telling you now, you're not getting your bond back. And I'm standing there thinking, hang on a minute, you can't do that. That's illegal. Not only is that bullying and harassment, but you're basically telling that person they're not getting their bond back. You are not allowed to do that. If you believe that person, that previous tenant, has done something where they should not get their bond back, you have got to put in writing within a certain time frame to the deposit protection scheme to say why. You then, as the tenant, can then turn around and sort of, appeal that decision, or counteract their complaint. So say, for argument's sake, my landlord turned around and said, oh, I don't believe that I should get my bond back because I've put a carpet in the living room, yeah, which would be really stupid because if anything, I've added value to the property. I've not took it away. But they go, oh, she's put a carpet in the living room. It's a breach of a tenancy agreement and she never had my permission to put in the carpet. Well, the first thing I would say is that's absolute crap because this carpet has been down for almost 9 years. And the reason I put the carpet in myself and paid for it to be put down myself is because the flooring that was in this property was unsafe. Not only was it unsafe, it was dirty, it was damaged, it was cracked, it was broken. Okay, and I have the checking in photographs to prove it, just like the ones for the kitchen, the bedrooms, bathroom, all of them. And again, that is a mistake a lot of tenants seem to do, is once you rent a house, keep your contract, your tenancy agreement, keep your check-in photos. So again, if they refuse to give you check-in photos, take your own. There's nothing stopping you. I took my own. The first time I moved into this house, I took my own photographs. I wrote down a list of things that were wrong with the property that I knew needed fixing. And these things have been not only logged with my landlord, they were logged with the estate agent, who conveniently says they don't have them anymore, and they've been logged with environmental health. Now, when the flood happened in the bathroom and in the kitchen, the flooring was completely rotten. Not only was it rotten in the bathroom and the kitchen, the bathroom is tiled, but the tiles fell off the wall. And what happened with the kitchen is the mold and the rot actually spread into the living room. So both the floor in the living room and the kitchen needed relaying anyway. And I will endeavour to make sure that the living room, because I've put down the carpet, is clean and presentable when I move out. But if I had left it with just the flooring that was there when I first moved in, all of this flooring would have needed stripping out. I'm not saying it might not, but at this moment in time, there is no reason to strip out the flooring in the living room. I have made sure that the damage that has seeped in through the door, which is, I can't really show you, sorry, I've got the camera on myself, but to the kitchen, that any of the flooring that was damaged, I made it clear to my landlord that this was the damage that was there, and he has refused to fix it. That is not my problem. That is not my fault. And I am not going to pay to have a floor replaced when my landlord knew full well that it was damaged and the environmental health knew it was damaged, and it is not my responsibility. It was my responsibility to report it, but not to then fix the problem. So getting back to protection schemes, your deposit protection scheme. I have already spoken to them. I have already said I'm worried that my landlord's going to try and keep my deposit. And they've said, no, there is protocol. There is a procedure that must be followed. And if it is not followed, then that money will not be released back to you. It will not be released to them. There is a time period in which both parties, that them as the landlord can say, no, we don't want them to keep that money back. We need it because there's been damage to the house. And there is a time frame where I would then say, no, I'm sorry, this is absolute crap. Obviously not using that word. Here is the proof. Here is the evidence. Here are the photos. Here is the times, the dates, everything you need, and you dispute it. Now, I offered to do this for both of the tenants in the properties either side of me, and they basically shut me down. When I turned around and said to them, I have got video footage, I have got photographic evidence, and I have been your neighbour for 9 years. So for 9 years, I can tell the deposit protection scheme that I have maintained the gardens, that I have reported issues to environmental health because your landlords would not fix problems. There is evidence with Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council that all 3 of the houses have been neglected and not being maintained structurally, internally and externally by the landlords. I have photographs, I can give you times, I can give you dates, and I can tell you that if they're bullshitting the protection scheme and saying, oh, we did monthly checkups, or every 3 months we came out and we maintained the property, that is a load of crap. And the reason I know it's a load of crap is because I homeschool my son, and I have lived in this house for 9 years, and during lockdown, nobody had their properties maintained. And I can probably count on the one hand the amount of times that I have met the landlords of either property. And those times that I have met them have been since their tenants have moved out. Prior to that, in the 9 years I've lived here, I've probably seen one of the landlords twice and the other one never. And again, I was constantly saying, your guttering's leaking. This is issue, that issue, this needs sorting, that needs sorting. Yeah, my landlord won't do it. My landlord won't do it. My landlord won't do it. Right. Well, that is all you have to do. And I will back you up. It's not my money that's being withheld, it's yours. And they just played over. They were just like, fuck it, we really don't give a shit anymore. Can't be doing the stress, can't be doing the hassle. And this is why there was something on the news recently about how many people do not get their deposits back when they are renting. It's because they don't know the legalities of getting that money back. Now, I didn't get it back from the first property I rented because I was majorly screwed over. But the second property I rented was in Hinckley. And again, that was through, it was private. I was there 6 months. Would have loved to have stayed longer, but the estate agent and the owner of the property bullshitted me and said, oh yeah, we want a long-term tenant. Within 2 weeks of being there, they put the house on the market and wanted me out within 6. Now, I didn't do anything to that property in the 6 months. I didn't even take my stuff out of storage. There was no point. So I'm going to be there for 6 months. And when we moved out, after constantly showing people around, which I now found out was illegal, we didn't have to do that, and telling them how shit the house was, and this is asbestos, and this is what's wrong with this, and this is what's wrong with that. It was like I was the estate agent. Because I'd lived in the house for 6 months, I knew what was wrong with it. And I remember the estate agent coming into the property, and she had heels on. They always wear heels. And she was looking around and she was going, oh, right. Oh, is this what it looked like when you moved in? And we were like, yeah. Oh, well, you don't have any furniture here or anything. And it's like, no, because you only gave us a 6 months tenancy. And she was like, oh, well, you seem to have vacated the property very quickly. And it's like, yeah, you told us a deadline. We moved our stuff. And so that's what we did. We moved our things. And I think we were really, really lucky because at the time we brought the boat. And it wasn't my boat, it was my ex-partner's. And so we'd already moved everything out. And what we couldn't move went to charity shop. And again, they were looking around the place and just being a little bit snooty. Oh, are you sure this is what the place looked like when you moved in? And we're like, yes. Check the check-in photographs. And although we didn't get our deposit back straight away, we did get it back. Every week, my ex-partner, he emailed and phoned the estate agent and the deposit protection scheme. And he said, right, I've vacated the property. This is the date I left. What's going on? Where's my money? where's my deposit? Where's my deposit? Where's my deposit? And I don't know when he got it back, but I know he got it back because I asked him and he said, yes, we did get our deposit back. And I was like, okay, thank you. So when people are saying you won't get your deposit back, you will, okay? You might not get it back straight away, but if you can prove that there is no reason whatsoever why you should not get that deposit back, you will get it back, all right? And I am sick to death of people being bullied and harassed and being given misleading information about, oh no, I was told I wasn't entitled to it back because of this or this or this. No. Okay? When I moved into this property, I was given a tenancy agreement, which was 9 years ago, and I also had photos of what the property looked like when I moved in. I've took my own, and I've kept a complete, up-to-date record of everything that has changed within this property within the last 9 years. And most of the damage, like I keep saying in my videos, it is structural. And the structural damage is not my responsibility or my fault. Yes, there is evidence of maybe general wear and tear as well, which after 9 years you would expect. And this is one of the reasons why I am painting the walls. Because I've recently viewed a house, it wasn't a house, it was an apartment. And the first thing the landlord said to me was, if you rent this property, you are not allowed to paint the walls. You are not allowed to paint the walls. You're not allowed to drill into the walls. You're not allowed to stick anything on the walls. No pictures, no pins, no blue tack, no nothing. And you weren't even allowed to put up a mirror. And then he even turned around and said to me, when you leave this property, I'm not going to keep your deposit. That is your money. But you must pay to have a qualified painter and decorator paint every single room in this property. And I was just like, okay, thank you. And I was polite to him and everything. And then after I viewed the property, I thought, fuck that for a laugh. I'm not paying a painter and decorator to paint an apartment or a house that I'm hoping to live in long term, like maybe 9 years if I could. That would probably cost me £1,000. And then I wouldn't get my deposit back, because I'd basically be using my deposit to pay a painter and decorator to do the property. And it was basically so that the moment I left, he could basically rent it out again and not have to do anything to it. So I've even heard that some tenancy agreements will say that you've got to pay a cleaning company to clean the property for you. And again, I have a real bone of contention with that one, because you may pay to have it cleaned, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your landlord's going to come round the following day and make sure everything's honky-dory. They might not come around for a couple of weeks. And then there's still going to be spiders' webs and dust, because you cannot stop certain things from occurring. I live on a main road, and the main thing my landlord always moaned at me about was the amount of soot that was on my windows, that was on my windowsills at the front of the house, and on my door. And I said to him, I could go out there every single day with a cloth and clean it, but by 8 o'clock in the evening, that window would be filthy again, because it's a main road that is used 365 days of the year, 7 days a week. Every single house in this street is subjected to pollution from the main road, littering from children who commute to the schools, and rubbish that is fly tipped. So, I'm not saying, if you feel it needs that little bit more TLC, not to make an assertive effort to do so. But because I used to be a cleaner for a living, I already have the equipment. And therefore, I'm not going to pay someone to do something when I already know how to do it, because I used to do it and I used to get paid to be a cleaner. And if I had to go back to doing that, I would. So I know that I am experienced and I am competent enough to do the work myself. Any work that I know I can't do or shouldn't do, obviously I wouldn't do it. And the main thing is obviously central heating, plumbing, gas, and the electrics. They are a big no-no, but again, they are not my responsibility. They are my landlord's. And the fact that even those things have been poorly maintained over the 9 years of me living here, despite me constantly telling them and reporting them to environmental health, I have that evidence and there is nothing more I can do. And all I've been told is if they do contest your deposit, as long as you can provide up-to-date evidence that is irrefutable, that cannot be disputed, then you will get your deposit back. So, you know, if you are worried about not getting your deposit back, seek legal advice if you can. If not, go to the shelter website, contact your deposit scheme direct. They will have information, they will have a helpline, they'll have an email address and an emergency phone number. Even though it says emergency, it might only be open from 9 till like 5 Monday to Friday or something. And speak to Citizens Advice. Would be my video that you're on. Even something like going on Money Supermarket, there will be information on there about how to protect your deposit, how to apply for your deposit, and how to get your deposit back, and how to appeal any decisions that are made to withhold your deposit from you. So I hope this has been useful. And again, I will probably talk about this a little bit more over the next couple of weeks. And again, I will try and explain how things have gone with my own personal circumstances. But please, please, please do not be fooled or coerced or duped into believing just because you've had a phone call from your landlord or your estate agent that you will not get that deposit back just because they've said that you won't. That is not true. All right. And this is why I got so angry at my next door neighbours, because I literally had already, with a friend, had already wrote the letters for them. And all I needed was their details and their permission to submit them. And they said no. And to me, that's quite heartbreaking, because one was a single mom like myself, and the other was just a young lad in his 20s who, again, had no support system. So he just took it at face value. Oh, I've been told I won't get my deposit back. I'm not going to fight it. And this is what I mean. A lot of people in private housing, they're not all, but like with anyone who's obviously in any kind of accommodation, people will prey on the vulnerable and the weak, and people who, maybe need a little bit more help or support in claiming back their money. And because they know that these people aren't likely to put up a fight, they will try it on with you. And this is why I'm saying Citizen Advice are amazing, and they might not always get it right, but I would definitely recommend speaking to them. Okay, so anyway, enjoy your evening. I can't believe it's almost the 23rd of December and I'm still wide awake. So, like I said, if you want to make any comments or ask me any questions, I will try my best to answer them. But for now, just take care, be safe, be well, and enjoy the festive holidays.